Thank you guys for having me. Again, my name is Jessica Reynolds. I'm the Director of the Office of Downtown Development. I've been with DCA since 2013 and been working in downtown development in general since 2008. Prior to coming to the state, I worked with the city of Carrollton as their Main Street director. So I have both local government experience, state experience, and prior to that, nonprofit experience. So what I'm going to focus on today is how to promote your communities using the rural zone. I will say that as we're going to click through the presentation, I don't think anything that I'm going to tell you today is going to be mind-blowing, like, oh my gosh, I never thought of that. I think what it's going to be is just hopefully a refresher of, oh yeah, these are resources out there that I probably need to tap into if I haven't done so already. And then after this presentation, we actually, and I'm sure Cherie's talked about this earlier, we have developed a presentation template that you guys can take back in your communities and use to tell your story and to explain the rural zone to your community. So we've done a lot of the legwork for that, and I'll walk you guys through that, show you kind of what it looks like, how to use it, what its intentions and purpose is, and then we will make sure to share all this with you guys afterwards. So let's get started. So I bet you didn't know, but today we're going to go to the animal shelter and adopt a puppy. And I'm going to use this, just follow along with me as a little example of why communication is so important and making sure that we have this unified vision for our downtown. So when I called Cherie this morning and said, hey, I really want to adopt a puppy, will you come with me? And she said, sure, let's go. We'll mask up and go give a little guy a new home. When I headed to the animal shelter, this is the cute little guy that I had in mind. I've had dachshunds before. I was like, I absolutely want a dachshund again. And when I walked into the shelter and I saw this little guy's face, I was like, sold, let's do it. But when Cherie went to the shelter with me, this is the cute little guy that she had in mind. Little Dalmatian.
Aww.
I know, he's so cute. But what we should have done is talk and make sure that when we went to adopt a puppy, we really both, were on the same page that we wanted to get a little corgi and bring him home. And the reason for this demonstration, and you're like, Jessica, what does puppies have to do with downtown development or community development or economic development? Well, the thing is, these words are so vague and ambiguous and can have so many different meanings and interpretations that when I say downtown development, everybody has a different picture in their mind. So some people are picturing dachshunds, some people are picturing Dalmatians, but what we want to do is really refine our focus and our intent. And so that means when we're talking about the rural zone program or when we're talking about downtown development in the context of our community, everybody knows that we are adopting this cute little corgi and we're all on the same page. So I will say that first and foremost, it's really important for you as a city to look within and to know yourself, know your strengths, know your weaknesses. I will say that you took a lot of time and energy to put together this rural zone application for us. We asked you guys to do SWOT analysis to identify these things. You had to put together your retail leakage surveys and interpret that data and tell us what it means. These are resources that should be read again and read through, and taking that information that you've had to share with us and bringing it back and sharing it with your team and saying, okay, how can we use this all to really elevate our A game and what we're bringing to the table here. You've done all this research. Don't just let it go to waste. Let it help influence and shape the direction you're going to be moving forward in. So first things first, when you come back and you're trying to communicate this, it starts with the city, right? This is a city designation. It's a designation for your downtown. It's a designation for your city. But you need to look at who's on your team. Again, you may or may not remember who's on your team. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you talk to them about it and people are aware. But I say that this is a really good time to sit there and to reevaluate who's on your team. Do we need to add people to our team? Um, a lot of times when you're putting together the application for us to review, it's one of those things that you're not 100% sure if you're going to get this, right? So you may keep your team smaller than what it actually needs to be. And so I would say, getting started again, it's good to go back and see who you listed as part of your team and see if that still makes sense for you, or if there's players in your community been at the table that probably should be at the table. Because those team members really need to be those walking, talking advocates for this program. We can't leave it to just one person, the kind of team lead, to do all by themselves. I would say any good downtown revitalization plan is not hinged on one person, right? It's a group of like-minded and similarly focused individuals coming together to make good stuff happen. And so again, your team needs to be your ambassadors. They need to be your walking, talking advocates. They need to be out there helping educate the community and business owners about the program and what it can and can't do. Again, sitting down and saying, what resources do I have at my disposal as a team lead? Who do I have in the city that I can work with? Who can help me, kind of get this message out, share the vision, and what skill sets can I tap into? Again, if you don't have great relationships with your zoning officials or your planning folks, or if your downtown development program isn't in community development, or if you don't have maybe a great relationship or even an existing working relationship with a marketing or communications arm of your city, this is a great time to kind of figure out ways that you can come together and work together. Again, this is not something that we want you to do in a vacuum. This is something we want the entire city to be working on together. So as the team lead, it's your job to really pull everybody together and figure out how we can all work to leverage this incredible opportunity that we've been given in this designation to really make a difference. So I would say one of the most important things, again, besides just the team and knowing where what resources are at your disposal, is going to be understanding your current business climate. And granted, our current business climate in 2020 is a little bit of a dumpster fire. It's different than it has been any other year, or probably will be any other year moving forward. We get that. We know that. So keep that in mind. But some things that can really help you get a feel for what's happening on the ground. If you don't have these things, I would highly recommend you invest time into developing them. But a business and property inventory, it's a great way to get started. Lets you know what you have, who to contact. And the thing is, you may have a property that's not vacant right now, but in 8 months becomes vacant, and it's nice to not have to do all that legwork when that happens, to be able to have those contacts in place, to be able to know the average cost per square foot in your downtown. And if that varies when you go off the main arteries, and how that changes. And may make small businesses a better fit for different areas of your downtown district, especially if it's larger. Understanding your consumers' spending habits locally. And again, you had to do all that work with that retail leakage survey. And if you're one of those communities that had the regional commission help you with this process, I would say you need to take this information back, take that application, and read through it again. Re-look at the information, reinterpret it, and then kind of compare it with where you're at right now and say, okay, does this make sense? Again, really understanding what you're working with, so that way you can better target and pinpoint and trying to figure out who would be a good candidate for this program. So next steps is you're going to go back to your city. Where do you go from here? I would say educating the people that you work with at the city is important. Making sure that elected officials on all levels are aware of this program and that they understand the basics. Remember, we want to create walking, talking advocates out of everybody. Making sure that any key staff that is going to come in contact with a small business or a larger business that's going to be opening up downtown that may be taking advantage of this, understands the program and how it works, and developing an internal process. I will say, I think I saw Amy Johnson on here earlier. Moultrie's does an incredible job with how they deal with new businesses. They have something called the Edge program. And one of the things that I love about it is whenever a new business is looking to kind of move in, they get all the people together that would touch that business and would have to work with that business to get them up and running. And they come together in one meeting. And so they can have a conversation about all the little pieces of the puzzle that are going to come together. And I think that's so important because what we don't often think about is what it's like from this small business perspective when you're coming into a city, and how it can feel when you're getting passed off from person to person to person, or if you show up and they're like, oh no, that's not my department, you need to talk to so and so, right? Well, if you have that happening a lot, that means we're probably not being the best at communicating the process of opening a business and the role that each of us play in it. And so that's going to be one of those important components to not only being successful at advertising and encouraging the rural zone program, but remember, there are other rural zone communities out there right now. It's not like it was 4 years ago when we first started this, and there was only a handful of them throughout the state. And so it was one of those things that was like, well, I really want to come here because they have it. I mean, you could have a neighbor within your region that also has this program. So you have to be a little bit more competitive than you would have a couple years ago. You have to think about, how can I make this process as easy as possible, as smooth as possible? What are the hiccups? What are the hitches? And how can we work through that so that way when a business comes in and we're excited about having that business here, and we are talking about all the program incentives that we can offer in the rural zone program itself, that we understand the process, we have streamlined the process, and that we can help guide them through that process. So I talked a little bit earlier about identifying the partners. Remember when you had to first, submit to us your team. Again, I said that you may have had a smaller team, just not knowing if this was actually going to fly or not. But I think, again, that this is an opportunity to sit there and say, do we have all the partners at the table that we need to? And you don't have to come back to us and to get permission to add people to your team. This is something you can do on your own, and I highly encourage you to do, because, again, I think the more advocates that you have out there talking about your program, helping explain it, the better. So make sure that if you have a Main Street program, that people from your Main Street team are on the ticket. If you don't have a Main Street program, but you have a Downtown Development Authority, I would hope that they have some representation as well. People from your chamber, Chamber of Commerce is a huge asset, a huge resource. Again, realtors also. I would say when I was in local government, and on our Main Street board, the person that we had that was a realtor in the community, they knew everything before we did. They knew who was going out of business, who was looking to sell, who was coming in, who was looking at property. They are great, great advocates, and can also help sell the program as well as sell someone on why they would want to come downtown. Power companies are great resources, as well as your regional commissions. They can help you understand and interpret that retail leakage survey, as well as look at some other demographic information. They're here to help support you in this process. And the way you can look at it, if you want to, is that, it truly comes from an economic standpoint. It is a lot easier to encourage someone to turn on the lights and just start paying the light bill than it is to have to completely run infrastructure and power lines and all that to get someone new set up. So for them, it makes sense economically why they would want to be a partner at the table. And so it's up to us to make sure that we have them as a partner in this process. And I would say if you don't have an existing relationship, whether it's with Georgia Power or Georgia EMC, or if you are an Electric Cities community, there's also community development representatives throughout the state that can help you as well and just be, again, good partners at the table. Banks, having a banker is awesome. Schools are a huge asset and resource, whether it's everything from high school, middle school, to elementary school, or upper level educational institutions, whether it's technical colleges or just regular universities or something like that. They can be a huge asset. And then civic clubs, it's a great way to get your story out, as well as have people, again, who are walking, talking advocates for you in the community. So when it comes to telling your story, I would say it's like anything else that you're doing or trying to advertise or promote. I always tell people you can't run one ad one time in one place and expect that everybody is going to see it and know it. With advertising, we have to diversify and make sure that we're continuing to educate and tell our story, and making sure that we understand our audience and are reaching our audience in a way that they expect to engage with us. And that means creating marketing materials that are available to distribute to your partners. You should have stuff to be able to give to the chamber so that they can pass it out. You should be able to have pamphlets and information to be able to give to your local realtors so that they can be advocates for you. And again, also realizing that not everybody's going to be able to make the pitch in the way that you may be comfortable making the pitch. And so, again, giving them these resources and materials allows them to be advocates for you and make sure that they're staying on message. And so, of course, I think it's important to make sure that you know what your message is. How is this rural zone program going to help you? If you've heard it once from us, you've heard it 100 times, but we all know that this is not the silver bullet. This is not the thing that's going to solve all our problems, especially in 2020. This is a tool in the toolbox. And so we want to make sure that when we're talking about the rural zone program in the context of other resources and things within the city, we're putting first and foremost why this matters to us, why downtown development is important to us, what makes us unique, why would you want to come to our community versus somewhere else? What do we have to offer? Again, why us? Why now? Why here? And when it comes to attracting new businesses, I would say, again, it's one of those things that if you develop these materials and they sit on a shelf and you're not actively talking about it and really reaching out, not just like within your own community, but regionally, you may not get the traction on it that you're hoping for. And so you're going to have to be a little more proactive, which means you might want to host a downtown open house with partners for available and vacant properties. I always think a property listing is a great idea, whether it's on your website or if you have a book or something that people can flip through at the chamber. Remember that we live in a digital age and that so many people want to check out stuff online and virtually before they actually take the time to go somewhere, to drive somewhere, to visit somewhere in person. So that's going to be your first impression, and having that information available is going to be very important. Again, I think it's important to not just think of your community and your traditional borders, but think regionally. Remember that we see city and county lines, but a lot of our small businesses and even folks living within them don't look at things that way. They don't see organizational boundaries. They don't see, there's no actual physical line that people are, driving over and they're like, oh, okay, on this side of the street, I'm in the city, and on this side of the street, I'm in the county. Remember that when we're attracting new businesses, it's actually a lot easier to pull in a business that is opening a second location or something like that. So think about the regional appeal, who you can reach out to within your region, but also what regional businesses or what businesses will be catering to your kind of regional clientele, especially when you're thinking about the more rural communities in, I would say, even in South Georgia or North Georgia. I mean, the metro is its own beast, but when you kind of go off a little bit of a beaten path, and we all know this when we're in South Georgia or in North Georgia in those smaller communities, we're pulling in people from all over. It's not just our immediate community that we're serving, but we have a regional appeal. And so thinking about that regional clientele is really important. If you have an existing new business packet, I would say make sure, obviously, you update this information. If you don't have a new business information packet, this would be a great time to develop one. You've got a really great, strong, awesome tool in the toolbox that you can use. And this would be a really cool opportunity to start doing something like that. If you don't have a new business packet, reach out to Cherie and we will get you in touch with a community that has a cool new business packet that may be R&D, which in our world means rip off and duplicate. And last but not least, hold a town hall meeting or a strategic planning session to talk about this resource and this tool. Because the thing is, even if you have no new businesses coming in, any of your existing businesses that are expanding or hiring or bringing on more people, they can utilize those job tax credits. And so it's not just something that is available and useful to those new businesses. It can also be helpful to existing businesses who are either looking to expand or are expanding in the ways of hiring more people. And then last but not least, make sure we're advertising. And I would say that, when we're looking at our properties downtown, we don't want to look at them in the context of these are just empty vacant buildings. We want to look at them as they are full of opportunity. And I always like to show this. This is downtown Hartwell. And this is that what they did is worked with a company to do kind of like a window wrap to get out the information of who to contact, available person and how to take advantage of leasing this property. Again, how do we package this whole thing together to make sure that we're making the most of everything that we have to offer? And our local media outlets are going to be our biggest asset here. Newspapers, magazines, TV, trade magazines, radio, social media. I hope that you have existing relationships with all of these, but also remember that who your target audience is. And that's where it goes back to knowing your community, knowing the types of businesses that you're hoping to recruit, knowing the primary demographic of who you're serving. And that hopefully will help shape where you spend any kind of marketing or advertising dollars and resources that you have. Because I will say, if you're trying to reach millennials, most likely you're not advertising in the newspaper. So again, keep your audience in mind and remember that it's not a one-time thing. This is something where you're going to have to continually be telling your story and sharing your story for the next several years while you have this designation. So it's not a one-time only sort of situation. And then last, I would say, is get creative. Thinking about what you have to give as a community, as a team lead, which is your time, obviously. What kind of resources do you have? And does that, and I would say resources not only on the local level, but on the state level, combining the rural zone program with something like the Downtown Development Revolving Loan Fund program or the Georgia Cities Foundation program. Do you have a facade grant program? Do you have a marketing assistance program? What can you do? Can you waive business license fees or a signage fee or something like that to those who are going to be taking advantage and bringing in so many jobs and using the rural zone designation? And what can you offer? What can your partners offer? What can you do in kind? The reality is that you are limited by your creativity. And the thing is that this is a great tool in the toolbox. We want to make sure that it's not our only tool that we're utilizing. I'm sure you've heard the old adage, when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So again, one of the questions that we had in that rule zone application is, what else are you doing, right? What else do you have to offer? What else are you doing? Because we know that the rule zone on its own individually is not the silver bullet. It's not everything that's going to fix the community. You have to be able to put this together as a package deal and figure out how you can offer this as, again, one component in this big puzzle of how do we revitalize downtown. And then again, the types of tools, packaging tools, and resources and marketing that you can do. We have rack cards, brochures. The difference between a rack card and a brochure, if you're not familiar, a rack card is going to be a single like panel that's going to be double-sided. A brochure would actually like fold out. Pamphlets, advertising, website, webinars. Again, we live in a very digital virtual world right now because of COVID restrictions. I don't see anybody getting a huge group of people together in a room and talking about it, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't do something online and, develop your, a place on your website where you have a webinar that talks people through the process and what it looks like. And here's a few examples from around the state. I don't know if I came in about halfway through Amanda's presentation, so I don't know if she shared this with you, but this is an example of their rack card that they have talking about their program, the Rural Zone program down there and how it works. This is an example of Villarica's brochure. What is the Rural Zone? Kind of goes into that a little bit. Who you would contact. Again, different qualifications, a map of the district. And just some highlights and points there. Their website, I really liked their website. I wasn't able to obviously screen capture the whole thing, but one of the cool things that I liked is when you Google, Rule Zone Georgia, there's came up and they had a bunch of links on there that, you would take you directly to, the brochure as well as some of the documentation that you would need. Douglas, I thought they had a really pretty rack card as well. Talks about the program. Again, similar in look to the Bainbridge one, and that's okay. Again, we can R&D from each other. Why reinvent the wheel if we don't have to? And then they had information as well on their website. Again, I think this is one of those things. It should be front and center, something that is easy to find, search out, and utilize. So I will switch out of this and kind of go back. Do we have any questions before we move on?
There aren't any questions in the chat right now.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, let me pull up my...
And I do want to say that DCA sent out a press release about the 10 new rural zone communities. We did get some decent press coverage. I know it was on WALB down in South Georgia. The Leesburg paper took it up. Moultrie, West Point's local paper. So, and I sent that press release to all the rural zone team leaders. Let me know if you need me to send it again.
Awesome. So earlier you heard me mention that we have designed for you guys a presentation template that you can take back and use to help educate your community, whether that's in person, via webinar, whatever you want to send it out, customize it. Again, this is what it looks like from our perspective. Please feel free to make this your own and make this feel like you. But again, we just wanted to give you something to get you started. So, it talks about, what the Rural Zone acronym is, that this was a House bill when it was signed in. Again, I've kind of put some call outs as far as like where you can add, some of your own customization, where you would put pictures of yourself or contact information. We talk about the length of the designation. And Cherie, I'm right here, right? December 31st, 2025 or 20, is it?
Yes,
20?
That's right.
Okay. Again, the purpose behind it, why you would want to do that. talks about, that it's that different tax credits. And then what we've done in here is literally, some of those questions that you're going to get that Cherie and Tricia went through with you earlier today, that it's a dollar for dollar reduction. It's not cash in your pocket, what that deduction means, and trying to keep it as simple as possible for the general public. So that way it doesn't get too complex or too intricate where you would feel like you have to answer questions you don't understand. This here breaks down the job tax credit again, explaining what a full-time equivalent is and how that would work. Then we move into the investment tax credit portion of it, talking about that. You need to update, or I can update before I'll send this to you. It would be January 1st, 2021 would be the property would need to be purchased after. Again, talking about eligibility and how this whole thing works. The rehab credit, again, breaking that down and explaining it. I always recommend putting those rehab standards in here. Now, you can use those Secretary of Interior standards. That's always a great idea. If you have some more specific rehab standards that as a city you want to include, this is a great opportunity to kind of call those out. One of the things that I liked about the Villa Rica brochure was that they specifically say, if you're looking to come in and tear down a property, this is not the program for you. So, I mean, that's one of those things that you might just, even call out here, like projects that would, consider demolishing a building or something like that wouldn't be considered. Again, so this is an opportunity to really kind of customize it and say what rehab standards mean to you as a city. Again, talks about claiming the credit, how this whole process works. Introduces you as the local contact, who that is. I would always say put a picture in and put different opportunities for communication, whether it's a phone number, a website, or an email address. We've included Tricia's contact information, especially when it comes to that whole certification process. If people have questions and need a little more guidance, we're here to help. Talking about the next steps once it's certified and acknowledged, what that looks like, how it goes to the Department of Revenue. And then we have this section called Keep in Mind. And I think this is good. It's kind of like a frequently asked questions section, but, something that you can use to kind of guide them through, maybe some of those questions that they may have about the tax credits, how long they can, be carried forward, that sort of thing. Again, a frequently asked question, but I like these, are they sellable or transferable? No. Can they be used to pay for demo only in extenuating circumstances? Again, these are the things that we see people ask the most, which is why they're in there. But if you have some other questions that you would like to address, again, this is for you guys to take back and to customize and to develop into something that feels like you and is representative of you and your community. So again, this is something we're giving you to start out with, but please feel free to expand and grow it so that it feels like it's something that is a good representation of your program. And then last but not least, what I would do is also talk about the additional supporting tools. And again, these are just some examples from tools from other communities that I'm trying to encourage you to think about. So whether it's the DDRLF or the Downtown Development Revolving Loan Fund program, maybe your Main Street program has things that they can tap into. If you have a facade grant program, if you have a local revolving loan fund, if you are a community that has a boost program, then that, again, these are all things that I would include. And what we've kind of done and set up here is that you would have a section about each of these programs, and you would click through that.